Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of All Nighter Discussions, where we discuss midnight movies of all kinds. With me is Alec White, Lucio Vasquez, and
Irene. Yay, Irene.
so we just watched the 1997 film, I believe, The Last Broadcast. It was written and directed by Stefan Avocado.
Avocado, huh? Well, it's actually, we have the box right here. Let's fact check real quick.
By Steppenwolf.
By Stefan Alvalos. You see, I'm reading it. It's not even easier. And Lance Wheeler. Yeah.
It was I want to say found footage because it's more of a horror mockumentary, or horrormentary, if you will. And it concerns a, what do you call them, a public broadcast station group. They have a show called Fact or Fiction, which is basically a poor man's Mythbusters. And they go out to the Pine Barrens of New Jersey to hunt for the Jersey Devil. Mm-hmm. And 3 out of the 4 of them get murdered. And the survivor is found guilty of the murder charges. And later he dies in prison under mysterious circumstances. So this whole project is from the perspective of a documentarian. Oh no.
There she goes.
So this whole project is from the perspective of a documentarian named David Lee, who attempts to solve the mystery of what he thinks really happened that night in the Pine Barrens. So guys, initial thoughts. This was your first viewing. What did you think?
I liked it. Okay. Is this a spoiler discussion?
Well, let's get our initial thoughts out first.
Okay. So, I liked it overall. And, at first, it was, I kind of fell into it. Because as he had mentioned to us beforehand, the only really thing to kind of lead us in, that it was made for $900. And you can kind of tell, but also they run with it. It works because it's a mockumentary. It's a found footage film.
A horrormentary.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it works for what they're working with. It's for the most part, it's mostly these guys filming themselves on it's 1997, so obviously the quality of the cameras aren't going to be that great anyway.
No.
And it works, and it actually adds to the kind of like it's like the horror, It feels raw. It feels like we're not supposed to be watching it. I like it.
And you, Alec?
When it first started, I wasn't sure what to make of it. It was definitely one of those found footage movies, and I'm not a fan of found footage movies. But I was a fan of this one because it had an interesting concept, and maybe I just haven't watched a lot of found footage movies. I've seen like Paranormal Activity, and I didn't like it. So I went in expecting not to like this one as much. But I liked it a lot. I liked like you said, $900. The production quality of it exceeded what the budget was, while maintaining the quality of a $900 film. The story and the ideas that they used throughout it really helped to build the world of the film and make some characters that probably wouldn't work as well in a modern day film.
Yeah, it's very of its time, and we'll get into that, but I do think as people who are aspiring filmmakers, there was a lot of value here in seeing these guys work, with a very limited budget, very limited resources, not professional actors, not high quality equipment, but they took that and they managed to craft a story and a structure that actually turned that into strength. And I think the raw, gritty quality is one of the main things that lends this film its atmosphere. Really
for sure.
Distinguishes it, because if you just played the story out linearly, who knows if it would have been as effective or as gripping. But then you get into the more timely elements of the story, and here we can start really going into spoilers and talking in detail about the plot. But this is very much about how the 90s media was dealing with violence and the way it was kind of exploiting violence and kind of contributing to that, which I think is really interesting, like social commentary to add on to the Jersey Devil stuff and all that.
Yeah, so I was surprised the movie was actually layered like that. You know,
Yeah.
like going in, knowing what we knew. I wasn't expecting to kind of get this like commentary about society in general in the late '90s. You know, I was expecting just like a found footage horror film, and
Right.
while we did get that, also not what I expected, but it was actually a welcome surprise to kind of get this more of a smart movie rather than just some cheap slasher, you know. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like I said, I'd only really seen Paranormal Activity before, and the political agenda beneath Paranormal Activity is just so immense.
Oh yeah, that
I
ghost.
didn't think it could be topped. The ghost with the goat hoofs. And it really spoke about Republican agendas in,
Oh, yeah,
in the
I'm sure.
early 2010s. Whenever it came
Actually,
out.
it's a fun fact. The ghost from Paranormal Activity actually is a Republican. He voted for Trump.
Well, you didn't. He's actually running this
Really?
year. Yeah, he's one of the Republican candidates.
Wow.
Is it Joe Walsh? I mean, it's not even so much as a politically charged as I think.
Yeah, not really political, but I mean, like when I was watching it, at one point it brought up like something about re-election or something like that, and I don't know if I was.
Oh yeah,
I don't know
the
if it
DA's
was
getting
for the
reelected.
DA. So they even said they needed an open and shut case to like propel his reelection. So the fact that they would use the evidence that they did have to paint an agenda on the only surviving member of this expedition.
Who was a weirdo.
Yeah, who was a weirdo.
He claimed to be a psychic.
And had a past that
Yeah.
didn't help him either. It just shows how easily people could be taken advantage of, even today in the media hemisphere.
Well, the most fascinating idea to me is that this new technology, video, that's supposed to give us the most pure form of truth, is actually corrupting the story, and it becomes more about painting a picture than finding actual evidence, because this guy's only convicted on circumstantial evidence. Again, he's a weirdo. There's a clip that they find of him having a bit of an altercation, a physical confrontation with one of the other guys. And when you go back through the 90s and you look at all these court cases that became famous, you can see that pattern of, people being convicted throughout the court of public opinion and not based on the actual evidence. And I think these filmmakers probably took a lot of inspiration from that. There was a documentary, I think, called Paradise Lost that was about 3 goth teenagers who were convicted for these child murders and were acquitted 2 decades later. The guy who made that documentary actually made the sequel to the Blair Witch Project.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
The really really bad sequel.
I didn't even know there was a sequel.
Kind of
yeah.
bad sequel.
It's the one guy from Burn Notice, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good,
I
Lucio.
know- thank you. I know a little bit about it. It's not a found footage film, so
Oh.
immediately it's very weird. I haven't watched it to completion. I've watched clips here and there.
When did it come out?
2000. It came out right after the first one.
Really?
Yeah.
It's
Well,
very weird.
I haven't seen the first one,
It's
so I
very
can't
jarring.
judge.
Yeah, the last broadcast is of a slightly higher caliber. Now there's another element to the film, that of this kind of dark humor, that I really appreciated. You have these kind of outcast guys, these 2 public access hosts who are going out and just trying to have fun with the limited tools that they have, and they're trying to create some stuff that at least entertains them. And they're even though they're kind of laughable in how naive they are, there's certainly a really endearing quality about that, especially I think to us, again, as aspiring filmmakers. We've gone off and shot things that we probably should have thought more carefully about.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
well, the thing is, you mentioned that they're not professional actors, but it felt, I don't know if it was just the aesthetic of an old video camera and the kind of nostalgia behind it being set in early 90s and whatnot, but it felt kind of real, It didn't feel almost like they were acting. These could have been literally us in the woods just kind of messing around, and having fun, but also trying to do some work and then just getting caught up in a very bad situation.
Like murder.
Yeah,
well,
pretty bad.
I mean,
Yeah.
not horrible. But
Yeah,
Well,
it
that's
was
happened to me
worse.
a couple times. I don't know about
Well,
you guys, but
Oh,
you know.
being murdered?
Yeah, it
That
just
sucks, man.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
You got these clashing egos on student films, and things really get out of hand.
Oh, of course.
There's only one way to decide. It's a permanent solution. But yeah.
Oh, you know, go.
One of you fucking guys go.
Okay, so Alec will go.
No, what I was gonna say is, yeah, I think they were out there having fun, but it was more tragic for the Stephen guy, I think his name was, or Johnny, whatever he goes by.
John.
Because they were talking about how this show was kind of like his life, and he thought this was going to be his big break, whereas the other guy was more just doing it for shits and giggles.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he pursued this big lead and ensued the help of these other two guys he barely knew, just solely based off the idea that he might be able to help them, only to go out into the forest and be the first one to get killed.
Yeah.
Now, did he actually think these two guys were going to help him?
I think he did.
See, I don't know. I don't, because they made a point in the movie that these guys were perfect because they were strange and I forget what other.
They're like
characteristics,
youthful,
yeah,
and strange, and kind of they
Yeah.
were out there.
and so I think for the most part they were looking for people that would kind of look good on camera, you know. And I mean, I agree with what you're saying. He did, they said that this was his life and whatnot, but in finding people, I'm fairly certain they were probably looking for just people who could, did they actually believe that he was psychic? Were they just going along with it? I don't think they believed. I mean, Locus, his name? Yeah, Locus.
Yeah.
They're saying that,
Yeah.
oh gosh, what's his name? James? Will? The guy who,
James, yeah. The
was it
psychic.
What?
Yeah. Oh my
Jim?
gosh. Jim.
Jim.
Yeah, Jim Halpert.
Yeah.
So they're saying how he is a psycho, and obviously, I feel like if they were actually buying in to this psychic kind of story, they would probably be more nice about it, right? I feel like they're using them.
See, I thought that the other guy, Locus, what was his name? Locus. I thought Locus was doing it for the joke or whatever, but I thought that Steven was taking it a little bit more seriously because this was like the first time they were going on live or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think he went in with the intention of finding someone who could actually help them prove something to get these ratings up, since the show is on the verge of cancellation. Yeah. And I think that calling him a freak or whatever, psychopath or whatever, I think that was more for the purpose of the show.
Yeah.
But the question is, did they actually think he was a real psychic, or did they just for their audience say, "Hey, we're gonna get a psychic and we're gonna go out to find the Jersey Devil"? Like it's just one stunt after another for these guys, and they don't think about the consequences.
Yeah, and in a way, for Steven, maybe they wanted to get someone kind of out there and kind of crazy for those ratings. Maybe that he also didn't think that they were actually going to get real, legitimate help, and they were just, okay, well, my show is failing that I love, and this is my life. Let me get these kind of crazy people and bring us to the forest, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, and that's exactly how they portray the media exploiting these kind of fringe characters and trying to push them into a narrative where obviously this situation is not healthy for Jim. I think it's really bringing out the worst in him. I mean, they antagonize him, they ridicule him, and but then they humor him, and they give him these mixed signals. So, I mean, while they're endearing and sympathetic characters to a degree, they're definitely guilty of the central crime of the movie. And with that, I think we should go ahead and talk about that twist ending, baby.
Okay, let me say, I don't really like it.
Aww.
But I kind of I can appreciate it at the same time, I guess. Okay, well let's say what the ending is. Let's say what the twist is.
Okay.
So throughout the movie there's a documentarian. I forget his
David
name.
Lee.
David Lee. And he's essentially going through the facts and trying to find out what actually happened. and then they find out that they were supposed to change the videotape, and then so they took out the last videotape, and that changed videotape was never found. Well, apparently David Lee was mailed just an unspooled giant roll of just mangled tape.
He was sent the tape that was missing
Yeah.
from that night.
And so he's going through the process with someone else, with some other lady. She's uncovering and recovering the footage.
She's a magnetic data recovery specialist.
Yeah,
A job that's still very high in demand today.
I'm sure. And so the twist is that they actually find out that Jim didn't kill them or kill the other people, and then they think, oh, okay, maybe it's Steve because he went missing. Not Steve. It's actually the documentarian himself. And then the documentarian kills. Okay, so then once this twist is actually revealed, it's no longer a found footage movie or a mockumentary. It turns into an actual traditional movie with like angles, and it's very jarring to me. At least.
Shitty quality.
Yeah.
Is still there.
It's
and
consistent.
so he kills this magnetic data recovery specialist, and then brings her out into the woods, and then continues filming his little documentary, and then it ends.
Yep.
No, you go.
So the magnetic recovery specialist was piecing together the tape that he got mailed because she believed that in that missing tape was what actually happened or who actually killed those people.
Right.
And in the process, she finds one small piece of footage, one little frame that's going to give her the answer. It has the murderer in it. Only problem, it takes 2 months and 14 days to render. So in that process, David Lee is going about kind of filming himself, talking about the documentary or whatever, before we find out. And then when she finally is like, oh, it's about to uncover, we're about to see who it is, she calls up David Lee and is like, hey, dude, we're about to see who killed these guys. He's like, great, let me get my camera so I can murder you. Mm-hmm. So then, beforehand, we'd seen him filming at like their campground and stuff like that. And then it's revealed in the cinematic footage when you see him recording himself that the dead body was with him the whole time. And he was just going to dispose of her in the forest, I guess.
See, it's so funny when you guys just say like that. It's like it's stupid or something.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the ending because it was. I wasn't expecting it at all. I was hoping the Jersey Devil would like pop up and be like, "I'm the Jersey Devil. I murdered your friends."
I feel like we describe it better than it actually. Like
the one thing I have a question about, which we can go to after you explain your taste on the ending. What the fuck happened to the guy that was in jail? How'd he get killed?
Oh, if they just never explained that.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
obviously, the
what do you
implication
think?
is that the documentarian killed him, so he couldn't talk. How he managed to do that?
That's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean that. Okay, I think we just have to chalk that to. I mean, they wrote themselves into a corner, but you know, I've seen this movie twice, and so I've had two different reactions. The first time, I kind of just hated it.
the whole thing.
Basically everything about the ending, like
okay, the ending. Okay.
Yeah, the twist. I loved the movie, and then I really just didn't like the ending at all. For the twist, for the switching to the cinematic style, just for what it like, the kind of damper it put on the story, like it almost felt like a self-defeating twist.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I feel like I just wasted my time, but I don't know. Like this time, I was really thinking about again that commentary about the media, and here we have a documentarian who is using this tragedy to create his masterpiece. He's kind of pretentious. He obviously takes himself very seriously as an artist and as some kind of, as somebody who's really trying to discover the truth. And the way it turns out that he's actually the worst manipulator of the truth, and that he commits the greatest crime of them all when he's supposed to be this objective, neutral look into this very hectic situation. I mean, I don't know if that was intentional by them. I think they probably just wanted the most out there twist, and at the list of suspects, like documentarian man is at the bottom. But it is at least consistent with their theme, and I can appreciate it on that level.
That's okay. So that's why I appreciate it as well, but the execution of it.
It's messy.
Because like throughout this entire film, we have this kind of gritty, raw aesthetic. It's filmed on these kind of crappy cameras, you know, and it adds to the realness. It feels like you're actually watching these guys in the woods. They're acting kind of realistically and whatnot, and then the kind of realness just fades away, and then we're left with like a traditional movie with that same kind of quality, and it's jarring, you know.
I think that might have been a stylistic choice though, because they were probably thinking like, here's the big twist. How do we make the audience even more uncomfortable with the fact that this guy they've been trusting this entire time is really the most fucked up of the bunch? And so by switching that style, even though it's still the shitty quality, like it's just showing you that what you see, like you're saying, the media, not being able to trust the media. This guy, like you said, is the biggest manipulator of them all. So you can't even trust what he's recording. That's why it has to switch that cinematic style so you can see the truth.
Here's something that just came to mind. So we see everything through the eyes of a camera through the entire movie. Someone is behind that camera, but then it's revealed to the truth is finally revealed to us when there's someone actually not behind the camera. Someone is not kind of perverting the truth.
Right.
The Jersey Devil was
the Jersey Devil is the Jersey Devil.
And he just couldn't afford a very good camera.
He was up on the roof with the camera.
And so
he bought a jib.
So thinking, okay, so that interpretation, I appreciate the ending more because.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's a lot to appreciate about it thematically.
Yeah.
And it becomes that question. I don't think throughout the film its social commentary is not at odds with its attempts to be a creepy horror film. There is, however, a level of suspension of disbelief that really gets tested with that ending because it opens so many logical questions.
Yeah.
So he was the killer. He had the footage the whole time, and he decided to hire somebody to go through the footage and fix it.
Also,
so he knew he would have to kill her. What if she just...
There's other people working on this because there's some camera shots where he's talking to the camera and it's moving. It's panning and zooming in. Like, who's
we don't know if that's the Jersey Devil.
Yes, exactly. I mean, like, it's...
Yeah.
And then, exactly like you mentioned, who killed Jim in prison?
And if he did... and also, who sent him the tape? Or did he just make that up entirely?
I guess he made... Yeah,
that's what... Okay.
It's like, oh, I was looking for that. Thanks.
Also, I mean, we have to assume he's the guy that sent him the whole thing about going to the forest for the Jersey Devil in the first place.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, they make that clear because the message was from a D something. You know, David Lee.
Oh, you're right. I didn't even think about that.
Shit, I didn't think about that.
But they've made it clear that this forest is big and vast and easy to get lost in. So how did he know exactly where they would like?
He was probably just following them, right?
Maybe he lives there. I don't know.
He's the Jersey Devil.
That's all I can assume at this point.
You can appreciate something thematically. It was like, did you guys see Us, the Jordan Peele movie Us? Like, you know, there were interesting thematic ideas, but the way those manifested into the story opened so many plot holes that I became distracted from what it was actually trying to say, and it's not as egregious as Us, but it approaches that kind of
like I see like a lot of movies use these like plot holes and almost like they're questioning about my movie afterwards, you know? They like intentionally kind of like just leave things unanswered, and I appreciate that, but also if
you had an answer, put it in your movie.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you can leave the theater asking questions, but also if they're questioning the legitimacy of the world you've built, or like the things that don't make sense. Like I'm gonna spoil Avengers Endgame.
I was
real
about
quick,
to say the same thing.
But with the ending of like Captain America, so Captain America at the end of Avengers Endgame decides to go back in time and spend the rest of his life with the love of his life.
Yeah.
Whatever, Peggy.
After kissing her
niece in Civil... Whatever.
Yeah.
It was weird. But he comes back into the present as an old man. But as stated earlier in the film, there are rules of time travel. This wouldn't really make sense.
No.
because
He would have gone into a parallel timeline.
Yeah, and so these are questions that, like, yeah, sure, we're all wondering, like, oh, what happened? Oh, we're questioning, like, oh, okay, we're talking about the movie, but these aren't good questions to have. These almost like break. That's a plot hole, and that breaks the movie.
How do you return a damn soul stone?
Yeah, exactly.
You have to unkill someone.
That's a good fucking question. And so, obviously they like the directors are just like, oh, well, you'll get the answer soon, and like that's all they can say, and everyone's like, oh, I'm sure it'll be in a future movie, in movie 76.
Be in the director's cut.
Yeah, so like.
Release the Snyder Cut.
Things like that, where they're legitimate plot holes and they're used as as just like a question machine, you know? That I don't like. What was I talking about originally?
The movie we just watched.
Yeah, what was I saying? I had a point.
Oh, we were talking about plot holes.
Plot holes.
Plot
and
holes.
the way,
like
and
who
the way
killed-
some
who killed the guy in jail.
and the way some
Yes.
questions are more, let's say, good than others.
Yeah, I got so passionate about Avengers Endgame, I completely forgot.
I can see you were really thinking about that one.
Yeah, so, no, literally, I was, and I have been, I still am.
Me too.
And yeah, so these questions left behind when you finally figure out that the documentarian is the murderer, it's kind of overshadows the rest of the movie, which was actually pretty good.
Right.
Which is a shame.
It would have made more sense if it was the Jersey Devil.
Yeah, honestly, I was
yeah,
expecting
that's what they were
it.
setting up.
I was kind of into it.
I would have loved to see some security footage in the jail of him just sitting in the jail, Jim sitting in the jail, and suddenly this little red devil pops up. And says, oh, I'm here to kill you.
But honestly, I love when they take that really raw, gritty approach to a supernatural thing. Like that's what the Blair Witch Project does so well. Not to just compare the two because they're found footage films around the same time, but yeah, they could have gone in that direction, and
yeah,
I don't know if they kind of thought this would be going too far. Let's make it the documentarian instead.
Yeah,
that makes
yeah.
more sense. But I think I don't know if we all agree that it was a mistake, but there was a better ending.
I think a cool twist. They did a cool twist, but I think they should have gone further with it. I think they should have had the documentarian in the beginning be taping himself in the locations that we see them going to later in the film. Not absurdly obvious, but if he's already in the forest and you see their campsite in the background and he's talking about their murders or whatever.
Yeah.
Something like him talking about their death before it happens.
Yeah, because see, that would be clever. That'd be planting the seeds.
Yeah.
And right now it just feels like they didn't have an ending in mind. Yeah. So they went with, the least obvious choice.
I'm kind of curious to see if they had originally planned for a Jersey Devil reveal at the end, but since their budget's only $900, they couldn't do it, and so they just thought of the documentarian because that would be the least budget intensive kind of ending to do, right? I don't hate the ending, right? I just personal taste. I think I would have preferred another ending.
Sure. Sure.
Because I can't say it was a mistake, right?
Okay.
I feel like that's not my place.
That's not your place.
But
who the fuck do you think you are, Lucio, calling something a mistake?
22 years too late?
Shut up. Shut up. But I okay, so at the end, documentary's in the forest, and you see him kind of look off to the side for a second and then continue talking, and then it's revealed that he's actually just looking at the body. But I would have liked if he was looking off and then it turned into him kind of getting hunted, because that's what I was totally expecting.
Yeah,
because they were setting up he's going into the forest to reenact the murders and reenact the kind of trail that they did.
But then that would open up even more questions. Is there a society of sadistic documentarians?
Well, no,
that's just playing Predator with each other.
Well, no, the Jersey Devil would.
Oh, the Jersey Devil.
It's the lady from 60 Minutes. She's running with a camcorder.
It's just you open up a bunch of plot holes, and we've spent more time thinking about those questions than about what the film's trying to say, and that's the sign to me that literally
most of this discussion has been talking about that ending and the
And-
plot holes.
It's not just because we're assholes and we like to pick apart,
although that is one of the reasons.
the creative endeavors of other more successful people.
Yeah.
But it just, you guys really did fuck up.
No, no,
Let's
don't.
be honest. And, among a genre that has grown pretty stale in the public's imagination, the found footage genre, this stands out as being pretty endearing. I think there's something charming about the aesthetic of this film. I mean, it's a grisly horror movie, but like the heart behind it and the ingenuity behind it, and the fact that these are real filmmakers who actually had real observations to make and real things to say, and I think that's always an important thing to have within horror films, where somebody could take this idea, dumb it down, and make millions of dollars off of it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they did, but that's a possibility, and I commend the filmmakers for their ingenuity here. And despite whatever missteps I might find with it, it's a movie I really enjoy. I'm always going to recommend it to people who, are willing to give these types of films a chance, and that's why I forced it onto YouTube.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
and
glad
thank you
did,
for that.
because honestly, like I was saying, it's a very smart film.
Yeah.
Like, you go into it kind of expecting some just kind of cheap slasher, but most of it is just character acting, really.
Mm-hmm.
You get a lot of interviews with a lot of people, and they feel kind of authentic.
And a lot of crafty editing too.
Yeah, lots of crafty editing. Yeah, and so it's a good time. It's it captivates you. It pulls you in.
Yeah, I would like to rewatch it again just to see what I didn't notice the first time. 'Cause there's a lot there to unpack.
And guys, speaking of found footage films and urban legends, I'm excited to announce that we have launched the Kickstarter for our upcoming feature film, The Curse of Professor Zerdonicus. It is a black comedy found footage film starring Alec as a college student who believes that he was attacked by an urban legend named Professor Zerdonicus. So he enlists the help of my character, Greg, to make a documentary about his attempts to prove the creature's existence.
Our goal is to raise $3,500 to cover the cost of post-production, costumes, location, cast, crew, etc. And we'd really appreciate your help. Please contribute whatever you can. Even sharing the link with other people would be a tremendous help to us.
Thank you guys for watching or listening on whatever platform you're on. Don't forget to visit that Kickstarter page, and thank you for listening to All Nighter Discussions, and we'll see you next time.
Alright guys, this is All Nighter Productions, signing out.
See
Bye.
ya.